Hello and welcome to Code Tutorials. In this video, we'll be taking a look at how you can present authors on your website. We'll be doing this with the help of the author info block from the Key Blocks for Gutenberg plugin. This page we're on has several examples of this block's use. The content added using the author info block is what you see on the right. The blog post on the left is simply there to provide some context. And the same applies to the other examples here. This block lets you tailor how you want to present your post authors and what information on them you want to share. Whether you'll use images or not, add social media links or leave them out, share additional introductory text or omit it entirely. There are different bits of content, or more specifically author information, that you can share when using this block. It is up to you to decide what you want to share to present your authors in the best light. And of course, how you want to style the author info block so it seamlessly matches the look of your website. There's a variety of options we'll be exploring in this video, so without further ado, let's dive in. Head over to the back end. You'll need a page to work in. I prepared this one and already added a section with 2 columns. The last column is empty, waiting for the author info block. And to add that block, I can click here to open the block selection. You can look for the block you want by browsing the collection. Here you can find all the blocks you have on your site, from Gutenberg to key blocks and anything else you may have installed. Key blocks are easily recognizable by their reddish-pink icons. In contrast, Gutenberg blocks are generally black. So, when you find your block here, you just need to drag and drop it into whatever location you want on the page. That's one way of adding a block to the page. Before I show you another, I want to briefly explain the content that's already on my page. I added it to illustrate how the author info can look within a broader context. And what this is a blog post displayed using a blog list block. The blog list is another of the blocks from the free collection of key blocks for Gutenberg. I set it to show only one post, and that's more than enough to illustrate what the author info might look like on a live site. And speaking of the author info block, I do need to add it to the page. I'll do that by clicking on this plus sign button within the empty column. This opens a pop-up window with a view of all our recently used blocks and a search bar above that. And I'll look for the block I want by typing in its name. And there it is. Simply clicking on a block here will automatically add it to the page. Okay, this is what the author info block looks like by default. There is a placeholder image along with a dummy title and text. When we want to customize a block, we need to start with the Content tab. And the first thing we can change is the layout. It can be standard or side image, which looks like this. The design I plan to make uses the standard layout, so I'll set that back. Okay, next we have the image field. I'll click here to remove the placeholder image. And then I can open the media library to add a new one in its place. I plan to use this one. Select. And here we are. Once we've set that, we can pick the image size. And you can see from this drop-down there are several different settings available. You can try them all out to see which one works best for your site. I'll show you just a few. If we set custom here, we'll get input fields where we can enter the exact width and height we want for our image. I'll set 150 pixels for both. Just a sec. And then click on Apply Changes. And there, the image has noticeably shrunk. By inputting specific values like this, we can make the image display in any size we like. But don't forget, you also have the predefined settings which are easier to set. For example, the thumbnail setting has 150 by 150 pixels by default. So there was no visible change by my replacing the setting. It's up to you to pick which setting you prefer here. I'm going to use full size. Okay. Following that, we have the field where we can replace the dummy title. That's this text here. I'll replace mine. Just a sec. Okay. Under this, we have the option to use current author name as title. If we switch it to yes, whoever created the page or post where the author info block is being added will have their username shown. Since I created this post and I'm a site admin, that's what's being shown here. This is a useful feature if you have multiple contributors and they all create the post themselves. With it, they can sign their work in a way. Okay, after that, we have the text field where we can add more information about the author. That's this on the page. I'll replace it now. Just give me a second. There, alright. Next, there's the email field. I'll type in a made-up email for my author. But you can leave this blank if you don't want to share this kind of contact point with visitors. Any email you add via this field will automatically get a mail to attribute. Okay. Below this, we have the signature field. This is where you can upload an image of the author's signature. Ideally, that image would be in PNG format with a transparent background. We can see an example of that on the blog's page. Let me find it. This is it. The signature we see here is actually an image inserted using the signature field in the options. Okay, let's go back to the options. The next one we have is for adding a link. Any URL we set here will be applied across the whole author info block. Let me show you. I'll set a hashtag to make the block act as if it's been linked. And now if I hover over the block, we can see the cursor turn into a pointer, indicating the element is clickable. I'll remove this as it's not part of my plan design. Under this, we can enable social icons. I'll switch mine to yes. And this is okay, the icons themselves won't appear automatically. To get the icons to start showing, we need to create them. For that, let's scroll down to the social items and add an item. Each item we create is going to represent one icon. And in my newly created item, the first option is to upload an icon. Please note it needs to be in SVG format. And to go with that icon, we have the link field for entering the URL of the appropriate social media profile. So this is if you want to have a graphic representation of a social media icon. If you prefer a textual icon, you can enable it. You just need to go back to the switches above and activate one saying Enable Textual Social Icons. Once that is switched on, you'll see the option to upload an icon has been replaced with the option to type in icon text. But the link field is still the same as, whatever its shape, we need to connect the icon to a target page for it to have any point. I'm going to keep the textual icons enabled as my design involves them. So I'll type in FB to signal Facebook and add a hashtag to make the icon seem linked. And as soon as I've done that, the icon appears on the page. Now that it's visible, I can show you the last of the switches, the Enable Links _hover. Please note that this option only appears for the textual icons. When I activate it, it creates an underline for the icon text that appears on hover. So when I hover, we can see a line appear under my textual icon. Still, my design doesn't include this, so I'll switch the option back off. Alright, I'm going to add 3 more icons now, but I'll skip ahead with the video since we've already seen the steps for adding an icon. Okay, all the icons I wanted are here, so I can keep moving down through the options. This brings us to another switch, Show Placeholders. This option allows you to insert or edit the author description text directly within the block, provided of course that you haven't added the text already using the text input field in the options. Let me show you what I mean. I'll scroll back up to the text field, remove the descriptive text I added earlier. Okay, it's gone from the block on the page. Now I'll go back down to the Show Placeholder option and toggle the switch on. And there, this created a text input field directly within the block where you can input or edit and style your author description. I don't plan to use this, so I'll simply switch it off. And then restore the text I cut earlier. There, we're nearly done with the Content tab. There's only a section at the bottom left. It's the Advanced section and it contains only one option, the additional CSS classes. You can use it to create a specific class for this element and then refer to that class when putting together CSS that would style your author info block. And that's it for the first Options tab. Moving on to the second one, Style. In this tab, we have several smaller tabs, each with a focus on styling a different aspect of the author info block. We'll start with the General subtab. The first option here lets us pick the content horizontal alignment. The default setting is left, but you can set it to be on the right or in the center. I'll leave mine in the center. After that, the author info border radius option allows us to set a radius for the top part of the author image. As my image is designed to be circular, it's not going to be very helpful in showing you the effect of this option. So let me go back to the Content tab and temporarily replace the image. I'll remove this and add, for example, this. Select. Okay. Now back to the Style tab. If I start to change the border radius, we can see how the top part of the image becomes curved. It's a bit like looking at the author through a window. I'm going to reset this as I don't need a radius with my chosen image. And I'll restore the image I want now. Give me a moment while I take care of that. Select, and there we are. Let's get back to the style options. After the author info border radius, we have the author info padding option. It allows us to add more space all around the content of the author info block. There are 4 distinct fields, so you can adjust each side separately. For example, I can set 50 pixels for the top padding, and then I'll have more space here, above the block's content, without changing any of the other sides. Okay, I'll clear this as I don't believe I need extra space here. The next option in line is the background color. As its name suggests, we can use it to set a new background color for the author info block. You can see what that might look like here. I want to keep the block background transparent, so I'll simply reset this. And the option after it is pretty similar. If I set a new color here and then hover over the block, the color will change. So this is the background hover color. As I don't plan to use this either, I'll reset the option. After that, we have the background image hover option. It allows us to set an animated effect that would appear while hovering over the author's image. The default setting is none, so nothing happens when we hover over the image. But if we pick something else from this drop-down, like zoom in, then we have this effect where the image seems to zoom in when we hover over it. And with that set, we can pick the zoom origin. By default, it's in the center, but we can replace that with, say, left. Then the effect would look like this. Or we can set, for example, bottom and have it look like this. Granted, these differences are subtle with my rounded image, but they can be very effective with square or rectangular shaped images. All these different zoom origin points also work with the other zoom hover effect, zoom out. That one seemingly moves the image further from the viewer. And besides those, we also have a third hover effect we can set, move. With this one, when we hover, the image moves sideways a bit. And this one is straightforward. It doesn't ask us to pick an origin point. Alright, so those were the different background image hover effects. You can pick the one you like best, but for my design, I'll simply disable them all by setting none for this option. After that, we have the signature margin top. In case you added an image with a signature, you could create more space above it using this option. I don't have one, so I'll move on. The option after that is the icon color. It's pretty straightforward. We can use it to change the color of our social media icons. We can see what mine look like. This option would work for both the graphic (SVG) icons as well as the textual icons, depending on what you set for yourself. And we have the same thing for hovering. We can set an icon color, but this one would appear only on hover. I'm going to set a dark gray shade for this. So when I hover, the icon I'm moving over seems to lighten compared to those around it. Okay, next we have the icon typography settings. This is a collection of several different options. They might not mean much to you if you set an SVG icon, but with my textual icons I can pick the font family I want to use. Or I can change the font size. It accepts values in pixels, ems, rems, and the viewport width. Then the weight, which allows us to pick any of the settings in this drop-down to set the weight of the icon text. I'll be using medium 500 for mine. There's also the transform option, where we can change the icon text to, for example, uppercase or lowercase. And the style option can help us make the icon text normal, italic, or oblique. Other than that, we also have the decoration option, which allows us to add a line under, over, or through the icon text. And finally, we have the line height and letter spacing options, if there are any spacing adjustments we want to make. And that's it for the typography options. I'll close this. Next, there's the social icons margin top option. This option serves to adjust the space above the social media icons. This here. I'm going to set 22 pixels as the value and separate the icons a bit more from the text above. And we have another margin option after that. The single icon margin lets us adjust the gaps between the social media icons, so we can separate them more or bring them closer together. I'll do the latter by putting 5 pixels for my margin. And here we are. This is what my icons look like with the new margins set. And that's all for the general style options. Let's take a look at what's next. Title style options. Here we can set which HTML tag we want to use for the title text, which is, put plainly, the author's name. I'm going to leave mine set to H3. Then we have the title color. If we want a new color, it's easy to set with this familiar color picker, and the change is immediately visible on the page. Then the title hover color allows us to do more or less the same, only this new color appears only when we hover over the title, i.e. author's name. Other than the colors, we can also change the title typography. When we open it, we can see that it's the same collection of typography options we've seen before. So I won't waste your time by going over them again. I'll simply change the font size to 36 pixels and transform the title text to uppercase. Okay, perfect. The last but not least of the title options, we have the title margin top. We can use it to create more or reduce the space between the title and the image above it. I'll set 27 pixels here to bring the two closer together. And now I have this gap we can see here. Alright, moving on to the options for styling the descriptive text. These options are pretty similar to those we had for the title, but we'll go over them nonetheless. The first thing we can do is change the text tag. You can choose any of the settings in this drop-down, but I plan to keep the paragraph tag for my text. Then there's the text color. You can use this familiar color picker to set any shade you like. Okay. And after that, there's another set of typography settings. If we examine them, all the options we saw before are here as well, so there's no need to go over them again. I'll close this. Under that, we have the text margin top option. With it, we can adjust the space between the title and the text. I'm going to reduce it by the tiniest amount and set 7 pixels. And this is what I have now. Alright, that's it for the text options. Let's open the ones for the email now. Here we have the email color. It comes with this user-friendly color picker we've been seeing throughout. And the email address we set for the author will reflect whatever you set. I'm going to set the hex code for a bright blue here. I want the email to be noticeable and also match the color scheme of the blog post next to it. And we have the email hover color too. I'm going to use the same blue here, but give it an additional touch of transparency. And now when I hover over the email, it seems to lighten. Okay, next, there is the email typography bundle. I'll use the options here to change the font family. There. And I'll set the font size to 17 pixels. Alright, that's all I needed here. Finally, we have the email margin top option. I'll set 21 pixels to get the space I want before the email and the rest of the author info content. And that's it. We covered the last of the style options and we're only left with the advanced tab. However, the options within it are something you get with every one of the key blocks for Gutenberg. And they serve to set how an individual block will look and act on the page. For example, there are responsiveness and motion effect settings here. While these options are undoubtedly useful as they can help you adjust the block positioning, background, border, and more, they affect blocks as a whole. They aren't specific to the author info block, so we won't be covering them in this tutorial. That brings us to the end of this tutorial. My block is done, it's fully customized and styled in the design I wanted. I'll update the page to save my work. To finish off the video, I'd like us to take one more look at the page we started from. Here you can see other design solutions besides the one I made in this video. You can find inspiration or something to model your own building work on. Now that you know what options are included in this block and how to use them, creating an author info element for your site should be a breeze. Moreover, with its varied style options, this block can easily integrate with any site design and look you want to achieve. So the only thing that's left is for you to have a go at making your own version of the author info block. And hopefully this video has provided you with all the information you need to do that. However, if you still have any questions after watching this tutorial, or if there are any comments or suggestions you'd like to make, please drop us a line in the comment section below. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and be the first to learn about any new tutorials and theme guides. Thank you for watching.